The silver-blue starship of the Narration Empire descended through Earth's atmosphere, its elegant curves catching the morning sunlight. Inside, Princess Taya stood before a viewport, studying the approaching landscape with critical eyes. Her tall, slender form was wrapped in ceremonial attire, flowing fabric that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue with her movements. The iridescent markings along her temples pulsed faintly, betraying her anxiety despite her composed expression. "Your Highness, we'll be landing at the human military base in 5 minutes," said Royal Guard Captain Doyen, bowing deeply. "Very well?" Taya's voice carried the musical quality characteristic of her species. "Remind me why my father insisted I personally attend this diplomatic meeting. These humans have barely mastered spaceflight." Captain Doyen maintained his respectful stance. "The Emperor believes forming an alliance with Earth strengthens our position against the Vordax. Humans may be technologically inferior, but their strategic location in this sector makes them valuable." Taya sighed. The aggressive Vordax species had been expanding their territory for decades. Even the mighty Narration Empire recognized the need for allies. Still, being sent as her father's representative to this backwater planet felt like punishment. The ship touched down with barely a tremor. Taya straightened her posture and lifted her chin. She would represent her people with dignity, regardless of her personal feelings about humans. When the ship's doors opened, Taya was met with bright sunlight and a crisp breeze, not unpleasant, but different from the carefully maintained atmosphere of Narration worlds. A small delegation of humans stood waiting on the landing pad, dressed in formal military attire. Taya descended the ramp with measured steps, her 6 royal guards falling into formation around her. The humans were smaller than she expected, with their varied skin tones and hair colors so different from her people's uniform blue-tinted appearance. A human woman stepped forward and performed a slight bow. She wore a dark uniform with various insignia that Taya couldn't decipher. Her black hair was pulled back tightly and her posture was impeccably straight. "Welcome to Earth, Your Highness. I'm Lieutenant Hana Kim. I've been assigned as your security detail during your stay." Taya blinked slowly, her translator converting the human speech. She looked Lieutenant Kim up and down, noting her small stature and lack of obvious weapons. "This is what Earth offers for royal protection? A single soldier?" Several of the human officials shifted uncomfortably, but Lieutenant Kim's expression remained professional. "I assure you, Your Highness, I am fully qualified. My team will support us from a distance, but I will be your primary contact and protector." Taya made a sound that her translator didn't convert, something between a scoff and a laugh. "Very well. I suppose you'll have to do." Lieutenant Kim nodded and gestured toward a waiting vehicle. "If you'll follow me, we've prepared accommodations at our diplomatic center. Your guards are welcome, of course." As they walked, Taya noticed that despite her small size, Lieutenant Kim moved with confident precision. The human maintained perfect positioning, close enough to protect, but not so close as to crowd the princess. "How much do you know about the Narration Empire, Lieutenant?" Taya asked as they approached the vehicle. "I've studied your cultural protocols extensively, Your Highness. I understand that eye contact is considered intimate in your culture, that Narratians value hierarchical respect, and that your people communicate not just with words but with temple markings." Taya raised an eyebrow, her own temple markings flashing, briefly with surprise. Impressive for a human, though there is much more to understand than basic etiquette. "I look forward to learning," Lieutenant Kim replied simply. The transport vehicle was comfortable but primitive by Narration standards. As they traveled from the military base into a city, Taya watched the landscape change. Earth had a wild beauty. Plants grew wherever they pleased, and buildings showed a surprising variety of designs rather than the unified aesthetic of Narration architecture. "Your world lacks cohesion," Taya observed. Lieutenant Kim glanced out the window. "We call it diversity, Your Highness. Most humans consider it a strength." A strange perspective. Uniformity brings order and efficiency. Different approaches to the same goals, perhaps, Lieutenant Kim suggested. The diplomatic center turned out to be a large building surrounded by gardens. Security personnel were visible, but unobtrusive. Lieutenant Kim escorted Taya to her suite, which had been modified to accommodate Nalarian environmental preferences. The temperature and lighting have been adjusted to match standard Nalarian settings, Lieutenant Kim explained. The water has been treated to match your world's mineral composition. Is there anything else you require? Taya explored the space, noting the efforts humans had made to accommodate her. It was surprisingly thoughtful, if somewhat clumsily executed. This will suffice. When does the diplomatic meeting begin? Tomorrow morning. Today is for you to rest and adjust to Earth's environment. I'll remain outside your door if you need anything. After Lieutenant Kim left, Taya turned to Captain Doyen. What do you make of our human protector? Captain Doyen considered the question. She seems competent for a human, Your Highness. But I don't trust their security systems. We should maintain our own guard rotations. Agreed. Taya moved to the window, looking out at the unfamiliar landscape. There's something about these humans. They seem so fragile, yet they've survived and thrived on this chaotic planet. That evening, a small reception was held to welcome the Nalarian delegation. Taya observed the humans with careful attention. They were emotionally expressive, their faces constantly shifting. They touched each other casually, handshakes, pats on shoulders, gestures that would be intimate violations among her people. Lieutenant Kim remained close, occasionally explaining human customs or introducing officials. Taya noticed that the IGU lieutenant was respected by her peers. They deferred to her judgment regarding the princess's needs. Your people are very physical with each other, Taya commented, as they watched a group of humans laughing together. Yes, touch is important in human culture, Lieutenant Kim explained, though we're being careful to respect Nalarian personal space boundaries. And do all humans laugh so freely? On my world, such displays are reserved for private settings. Lieutenant Kim smiled slightly. Emotional expression varies among humans, but yes, we generally express feelings openly. Is that considered inappropriate in your culture? Control is valued, Taya said. One's inner state should not disrupt social harmony. As the evening progressed, Taya found herself growing fatigued by the constant stimulation of human interaction. Lieutenant Kim noticed immediately. Your Highness, would you like to retire for the evening? Taya nodded, grateful for the human's perception. As they walked back to her suite, Taya found herself curious about this small human who seemed so attuned to her needs. How were you selected for this assignment, Lieutenant? I specialized in xenodiplomatic security and have experience working with non-human species. My superiors felt my background and temperament would be compatible with Nalarian cultural values. And, what do you think of us? Taya asked. Of Nalarians? Lieutenant Kim considered her answer carefully. I think your civilization has achieved remarkable things. Your technological and social development is impressive. But I also think our peoples could learn from each other, if we're both willing. Taya's temple markings flickered with interest. Perhaps this diplomatic mission wouldn't be as tedious as she'd feared. This human, at least, seemed worth studying. Tomorrow will be a significant day, Lieutenant. I hope your security measures are as thoughtful as your cultural observations. They are, Your Highness. I promise you'll be safe in my care. Neither of them could have known how soon that promise would be tested. The morning sun cast long shadows across the mountain road as the diplomatic convoy wound its way toward the research facility. 3 armored vehicles traveled in formation. Princess Taya's transport in the middle, flanked by security vehicles. The princess sat in dignified silence, watching the rugged Earth landscape pass by her window. 3 days had passed since her arrival on this strange planet. 3 days of meetings and tours and carefully scripted interactions. Princess Taya had begun to develop a grudging respect for the humans' diplomatic efforts, though she would never admit it aloud. Lieutenant Hana Kim sat across from her, alert and professional. The human soldier had proven herself capable and observant, anticipating the princess's needs before they were voiced. It was unexpected. The research facility we're visiting specializes in clean energy development, Lieutenant Kim explained. Our scientists are eager to share their progress on fusion technology. Taya's temple markings flickered with subtle amusement. Fusion? My people mastered fusion generators 3 centuries ago. I'm aware, Kim replied without defensiveness. But our approach differs from Narration methods. Sometimes a fresh perspective can be valuable. Before Taya could respond, a deafening explosion tore through the air. The lead vehicle disappeared in a fireball. Their own transport swerved violently, the driver fighting for control as the road crumbled beneath them. "Ambush!" shouted Captain Doyen, drawing his weapon. "Lieutenant." Kim moved with startling speed. She threw herself across the space between them, shielding the princess with her body as their vehicle skidded and flipped. The world spun in a chaotic blur of motion and sound. Taya felt the human's arms tighten protectively around her as they crashed. When the movement stopped, they were upside down, suspended by safety restraints. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air. Lieutenant Kim released her hold on the princess and quickly cut through Taya's restraints, catching her before she could fall. "Are you injured, Your Highness?" Kim asked, her voice steady despite a cut on her forehead that leaked red human blood. "I am unharmed," Taya replied, her translator struggling with the sudden stress in her voice. "My guards..." A plasma burst cut through the side of the vehicle, silencing her question. Lieutenant Kim pulled the princess down, shielding her again. "Vordax, weapons," Kim whispered, drawing her sidearm. "We need to move now." Outside, the sounds of battle grew louder. Captain Doyen shouted something in Narration, a warning cut short by another plasma burst. Taya's temple markings pulsed with distress. Lieutenant Kim pried open the damaged door, checked the surroundings, then pulled the princess from the wreckage. Taya had barely gained her footing when she saw them, gray-skinned figures with 4 arms, moving with predatory grace. "Vordax warriors, how did they get to Earth?" she gasped. "Questions later," Kim replied, firing 3 precise shots that dropped an approaching attacker. "Right now, we run." They fled into the dense forest beside the road. Lieutenant Kim moved, with surprising confidence through the terrain, guiding the princess over fallen logs and around hazardous footing. Behind them, the sounds of fighting faded, replaced by the methodical movements of pursuers. "Why are they targeting me?" Taya asked as they paused behind a large boulder. Kim checked her weapon. "You're a valuable political target. The princess of the Narration Empire would make an excellent hostage." A branch snapped nearby. Lieutenant Kim signaled for silence, then slowly peered around their cover. 3 Vordax soldiers moved through the forest, their multiple arms each holding different weapons. The human's expression hardened as she assessed the threat. "Stay here," she whispered. "Don't move unless I signal you." Before Taya could protest, Lieutenant Kim slipped away, moving silently between the trees. The princess watched in astonishment as the human circled behind the Vordax patrol. Kim attacked the rearmost soldier first, a quick, efficient strike that rendered him unconscious before he could alert his companions. The second Vordax sensed something and began to turn, but Lieutenant Kim was already moving. She fired once, dropped to the ground to avoid return fire, then rolled to a new position. Her second shot found its target. The third Vordax leveled all 4 of his weapons in different directions, searching for the threat. Lieutenant Kim threw a small object that exploded with blinding light. While the Vordax was disoriented, she attacked directly, disabling him with precision strikes. Taya had never seen a human move with such lethal efficiency. It contradicted everything she'd been told about their physical limitations. Kim returned to the princess's position, breathing hard but composed. "We need to keep moving. There will be more." "You fight unusually well for a human," Taya said as they resumed their flight through the forest. A grim smile crossed Kim's face. "We're tougher than we look." They traveled for hours, climbing higher into the mountains. Lieutenant Kim maintained a punishing pace but always remained attentive to the princess's needs. When Taya stumbled on the unfamiliar terrain, Kim was there to steady her. When the princess needed rest, the human found secure locations and stood guard. As daylight began to fade, they reached a small clearing with a cabin nestled against the mountainside. "Emergency shelter," Kim explained. "Basic supplies, communications, equipment, and defensible position. Inside, the cabin was simple but well-equipped. Lieutenant Kim secured the perimeter, checking windows and setting small devices around the clearing. Proximity sensors, she explained when she returned. We'll have warning if they approach. Taya watched as the human finally attended to her own injuries. The cut on her forehead, a bruised shoulder, and a burn on her arm from a near-miss plasma shot. Why did you do that? Taya asked suddenly. Do what? In the vehicle. You placed yourself between me and danger. You could have been killed. Lieutenant Kim looked up from bandaging her arm. That's my job. Your job requires your death? If necessary. The human's simple acceptance of this fact seemed genuine. Protecting you is my mission. Not just because of orders, but because your survival matters to the alliance between our worlds. Taya's temple markings pulsed with confusion. Nilarians understood sacrifice for the greater good in abstract terms, but individual self-sacrifice was rare in their culture. A comfortable silence fell between them as Lieutenant Kim established a secure communications channel. Something's wrong, Kim said after several failed attempts. I can't reach command, the channels are being jammed. The Vordax have advanced signal disruption technology, Taya confirmed, which means they came prepared specifically for you. Kim's expression darkened. This wasn't random, they knew your route, your schedule. The implication hung in the air between them. Someone had provided the Vordax with classified information. A traitor, Taya whispered, her markings flashing with alarm. But who? Only the highest officials knew our itinerary. Before Lieutenant Kim could respond, one of the proximity sensors triggered. A small light blinked on Kim's wrist device. She immediately doused the cabin's lights and moved to the window. Weapon ready, how many? Taya asked, her voice barely audible. At least 5, Kim replied. They're being cautious, moving slowly. She turned to the princess, her expression resolute. I need you to trust me, Your Highness. Can you do that? Taya studied the human's face in the dim moonlight. 3 days ago, she would have dismissed the very idea of trusting a human with her safety. Now, having witnessed Lieutenant Kim's skill and dedication firsthand, she found her answer surprisingly easy. Yes, Lieutenant, I trust you. Kim nodded once, then moved with quiet efficiency to prepare their defense. The night was just beginning, and somewhere in the darkness their hunters were closing in. The early morning mist clung to the trees as Princess Taya and Lieutenant Kim slipped away from the cabin. They had survived the night through Kim's tactical knowledge and a fair amount of luck. The Vordax patrol had eventually withdrawn after Kim used the cabin's defense systems to make them believe they were facing a larger force. We need to keep moving, Lieutenant Kim said softly, checking her wrist device. The Vordax will return, with reinforcements once they realize we've escaped. Taya nodded, her usually perfect appearance now disheveled. Her ceremonial clothing, designed for diplomatic functions rather than wilderness survival, was torn and dirty. Despite this, she maintained her royal composure. Where are we going? She asked. There's a coalition outpost approximately 30 kilometers east, Kim replied. But we'll need to be careful. If there's a traitor, we can't trust standard communication channels. The princess's temple markings pulsed with frustration. I am not accustomed to running and hiding. I understand, Kim said. But right now, staying alive is our priority. She hesitated, then added, Your Highness, you may need to remove your royal insignia. It reflects light and makes you easier to track. Taya looked down at the gleaming crest on her chest, a symbol of her royal lineage worn by Nilarian royalty for centuries. After a moment's hesitation, she unclasped it and tucked it into a hidden pocket. A wise precaution, she conceded. They traveled cautiously through the forest, Lieutenant Kim leading them on a winding path that utilized natural cover. The human moved with quiet confidence, constantly scanning their surroundings. Taya found herself studying Kim's methods, learning from the human's survival skills. By midday, they reached a rushing stream. Kim filled their water containers and checked for signs of pursuit. We should rest briefly, she said. You're not used to this terrain. Taya wanted to protest but couldn't deny her fatigue. The higher oxygen content of Earth's atmosphere was both invigorating and exhausting for her Nalarian physiology. As they rested by the stream, Kim shared some emergency rations, simple human food that Taya found strangely appealing despite its basic nature. "How did you become a soldier?" Taya asked, genuinely curious about this human who defied her expectations. Kim seemed surprised by the personal question but answered readily. "My family has a tradition of military service. My grandmother fought in the Pacific conflicts, my mother in the resource wars." She smiled slightly. "I always knew I would follow their path." "Your family sent their females to battle?" Taya's temple markings flickered with interest. "In Nalarian culture, females lead in politics and science. Males typically serve in the military." "On Earth, anyone can choose their path," Kim replied, "though it wasn't always that way. Humans have a long history of overcoming our own prejudices." Taya considered this. "Your species is confusing. So physically limited compared to others in the galaxy, yet you've survived despite this weakness." Instead of taking offense, Kim smiled. "We compensate with creativity and persistence. Humans are remarkably good at not giving up." Before they could continue their conversation, Kim's expression changed. She held up a hand for silence, then pointed to a barely visible drone, hovering above the tree line in the distance. "Vordak Scout," she whispered. "We need to move." They crossed the stream and continued eastward, now moving with greater urgency. The drone had likely detected their heat signatures. Lieutenant Kim led them through increasingly difficult terrain, dense underbrush, rocky slopes, areas where they could minimize their traceable path. Late in the afternoon, they came upon an unexpected sight, a small human dwelling nestled in a clearing. It appeared unoccupied, with no vehicles or signs of recent activity. "A hunting cabin," Kim explained. "Private property, but we need shelter and supplies." They approached cautiously. Kim checked for occupants, then skillfully bypassed the simple lock. Inside, the cabin was rustic but well-maintained. A single room with basic furniture, a stone fireplace, and shelves stocked with preserved food. "We should be safe here for the night," Kim said. "The walls will mask our heat signatures, and we can observe the surroundings for any approach." Taya explored the small space with curiosity. "Your people build such individual dwellings, without uniformity or central planning?" Kim nodded. "Humans value personal expression. Every home reflects its owner's preferences." "Inefficient," Taya commented, though without her earlier derision. "Perhaps, but it makes Earth interesting." Lieutenant Kim secured the cabin while Taya examined the unfamiliar objects around her. Human artifacts were strange, practical yet often decorated beyond functional necessity. She picked up a carved wooden figure of a bear, studying its craftsmanship. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Kim said, noticing her interest. "Someone made that by hand, probably the owner of this cabin. Why expend such effort on a non-essential item? Art matters to humans. It's how we express our relationship with the world." Kim began preparing a small meal from the cabin supplies. Even in our darkest periods of history, humans created art. It keeps us human. As night fell, they shared a simple meal. The cabin grew cold with darkness, and Kim carefully lit a small fire in the fireplace. Taya watched the flames with fascination. Open fire was rarely used on her homeworld except in ceremonial contexts. "Tell me about your world," Kim said. As they sat by the fire, Taya found herself describing Nalar, its crystalline cities, the elegant mathematical precision of its architecture, the carefully maintained ecological balance. As she spoke, she realized she was sharing aspects of her culture no diplomatic briefing would cover. "It sounds beautiful," Kim said when she finished. "Different from Earth, but beautiful in its own way." "Yes," Taya agreed. "As Earth is beautiful, in its wild, chaotic way." They fell silent, listening to the crackling fire. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming against the cabin roof. The princess found the sound oddly comforting. "Lieutenant," she said eventually, "if we survive this, I Believe my report to the Emperor will differ significantly from what I expected to write. Kim smiled. How so? I arrived believing humans were primitive and unworthy of alliance, but I've seen evidence that suggests otherwise. Taya's temple markings pulsed with thoughtfulness. Your adaptability is impressive. High praise from a Nilarian princess, Kim replied with a slight smile. Taya was about to respond when a faint electronic tone sounded from Kim's wrist device. The lieutenant immediately tensed, checking the display. Someone's trying to contact us on a secured channel, she said, her expression guarded. Coalition encryption, but that doesn't guarantee safety. Could it be your command seeking us? Taya asked. Possibly. Kim hesitated. Or it could be someone trying to confirm our location. After a moment's consideration, Kim activated the communication, but kept the transmission one way. They could receive but not send. A familiar voice emerged from the device, speaking in formal Nilarian. Taya's markings flashed with recognition. It's Advisor Minho, she whispered, my father's senior diplomat. The message was brief. Coordinates for extraction, a promise of safety, a warning about widespread infiltration of Earth's security networks. When it ended, Taya looked to Kim. Expectantly, can we trust him? Kim asked. He's one of the few who knew your complete itinerary. Taya's confidence wavered. Minho has served my family for decades, but... She stopped, considering. He was strongly opposed to the human alliance from the beginning. Lieutenant Kim's expression grew serious. Then we proceed with extreme caution. If Minho is the traitor, these coordinates could lead us directly to the Vordax, and if he's not, we're refusing our best chance at extraction. They studied each other across the firelight, human and Nilarian, so different yet now bound by shared danger and growing trust. What would you do? Taya asked softly. If this were solely your decision, Kim's answer was careful but decisive. I would verify before trusting. We can approach the coordinates without revealing ourselves. Assess the situation, then decide. Taya nodded. A wise approach. We will do this together. Outside, the rain continued to fall as they planned their next move, neither aware of how their unusual partnership would soon be tested in ways neither could imagine. The sky was heavy with dark clouds as Princess Taya and Lieutenant Kim approached the coordinates from Advisor Minho's message. They moved silently through the forest, stopping frequently to check for signs of danger. After 2 days of travel, they had reached a small clearing with a landing pad barely visible through the trees. There, Kim whispered, pointing to a sleek shuttle bearing Nilarian insignia. Royal Diplomatic Transport. Taya's temple markings pulsed with hope, but she remained cautious. Lieutenant Kim had taught her well over these past days. It could still be a trap, she said softly. Kim nodded, studying the area through compact binoculars. I see 4 Nilarian guards by the shuttle. No sign of Vordax, but they could be hiding. They watched for nearly an hour, observing patterns and movements from their concealed position. Everything appeared legitimate. Standard Nilarian security. Protocols, proper uniforms, familiar equipment. I recognize those guards, Taya said finally. They're from my personal detail. Kim lowered the binoculars, her expression troubled. Which means they either escaped the ambush or they were part of it. The princess's markings flickered with distress. I've known some of them since childhood. Trust is a luxury right now, Kim reminded her gently. We need more information. A new figure emerged from the shuttle, tall and dignified with the distinctive blue skin of the Nilarian people and elaborate formal robes. Advisor Minho walked to the center of the clearing and looked around expectantly. He came personally, Taya whispered. Kim studied the advisor carefully. He seems to be alone. I don't see weapons. After several minutes of observation, they agreed on a plan. Kim would remain hidden with a clear line of sight while Taya approached the clearing. At the first sign of trouble, the princess would drop to the ground, allowing Kim to provide covering fire. Be careful, Kim said as Taya prepared to reveal herself. Remember everything we've discussed. The princess nodded. Over the past days, she had come to respect this human's judgment and skill. I will. Taya stepped from the forest cover and walked into the clearing with royal dignity despite her disheveled appearance. Advisor Minho turned at the sound of her approach, his temple markings pulsing with apparent relief. Princess Taya, thank the stars you're alive. He moved toward her, arms extended in the formal Narration greeting between high officials. When we lost contact with your convoy, I feared the worst. Taya maintained a careful distance. How did you find me, Minho? Communications have been jammed. We tracked the emergency beacon in your royal insignia, he explained. It activated when your transport crashed. Taya kept her expression neutral, though her markings betrayed her concern. She had removed her insignia days ago at Kim's suggestion. It should not have been transmitting any signal. Where is your human guard? Minho asked, looking past her to the forest. Surely she hasn't abandoned you. Lieutenant Kim died protecting me from the Vordax. Taya lied smoothly. She fought, bravely. Minho's expression shifted subtly. A pity, though perhaps it's for the best. This situation has become complicated. How so? Taya asked, taking a small step backward. Minho sighed. The alliance with humans was always a mistake. Princess, your father is blinded by fear of the Vordax, but there are better solutions. He gestured to the shuttle. Come, we have much to discuss during our return journey. Where are we going? Taya asked, stalling. The diplomatic mission isn't complete. Plans have changed. Minho's voice hardened slightly. The Emperor has been temporarily relieved of duty. The Council of Elders now guides the Empire, with more appropriate vision for our future. Taya's markings flashed with alarm. A coup? You've betrayed my father? Not betrayal. Evolution. Minho stepped closer. Your father would have us ally with lesser species, diluting our greatness. The Council understands our true destiny. Movement at the edge of the clearing caught Taya's attention. Gray-skinned figures emerged from behind the shuttle. Vordax soldiers, at least 6 of them. They moved with predatory grace, weapons raised, but not yet firing. You allied with the Vordax? Taya asked, genuine shock in her voice. Our ancient enemies? Minho smiled thinly. Temporary allies of convenience. They share our desire to eliminate human influence in this sector. The Narration guards who Taya had recognized now moved to flank the Vordax, confirming their betrayal. The princess felt a wave of anger and disappointment, but kept her composure as Lieutenant Kim had taught her. What happens now? She asked. You return with us to Nalar as a valuable political symbol, Minho explained. With your support, willing or otherwise, the new government will solidify its legitimacy. The alliance with Earth will end. The humans will be left to face the Vordax alone. And my father? Minho's expression grew cold. He remains alive for now. His future depends largely on your cooperation. Taya straightened her posture, calling, on generations of royal training. I see. And if I refuse? Then things become considerably less pleasant, Minho said, though you will return with us regardless. A Vordax commander stepped forward, his 4 arms each holding different weapons. Enough talk, secure the princess. Taya tensed, preparing to drop as planned, when a new voice rang out from across the clearing. Step away from her. Lieutenant Kim emerged from the forest, her weapon raised. She had circled around during the conversation, positioning herself, with a clear shot at both Minho and the Vordax commander. Minho's surprise quickly turned to amusement. The human lives, 1 soldier against 10? Your species truly doesn't understand hopeless situations. Actually, we specialize in them, Kim replied calmly. Princess, move away slowly. The Vordax commander snarled something in his harsh language. 2 of his soldiers raised their weapons toward Kim. Before they could fire, the lieutenant shot both with quick precision. They fell, wounded but alive. Chaos erupted across the clearing. Taya dropped to the ground as Kim had instructed her. More shots were exchanged. The remaining Vordak scrambled for cover while the traitorous Nalarian guards returned fire at Kim's position. Lieutenant Kim moved with remarkable speed and skill, changing positions constantly. She fired only when necessary, making each shot count. Still, she was outnumbered and surrounded. "Run, Princess!" Kim shouted between exchanges of fire. "Head east! Keep going!" Taya began crawling toward the forest edge, staying low as energy bolts sizzled through the air above her. She had nearly reached cover when she heard Minho's voice behind her. "Stop her." The princess looked back to see Advisor Minho pointing toward her, his face twisted with rage. The Vordak's commander raised a heavy weapon designed for maximum damage. Lieutenant Kim saw it too. Without hesitation, she broke from cover and charged across the open ground, firing continuously to draw attention away from Taya. It was a reckless, desperate move. Exactly the kind of self-sacrificing action the princess had come to recognize as distinctly human. The Vordak's commander shifted his aim toward the charging human. Taya screamed a warning, but it came too late. The weapon discharged with a thunderous sound. Lieutenant Kim was thrown backward by the impact, her body crumpling to the ground. "No!" Taya cried, her markings pulsing with pure distress. The clearing fell momentarily silent. Minho turned back to Taya, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Now, Princess, shall we continue our discussion without further?" His words cut off as a small object landed near his feet, one of the compact explosive devices Kim had shown Taya during their time together. The princess covered her eyes just before it detonated with blinding light and deafening sound. Taking advantage of the confusion, Taya sprinted to Lieutenant Kim's side. The human was conscious but severely injured, blood soaking through her uniform. "Go," Kim whispered through gritted teeth. "Get to safety." "I will not leave you," Taya replied firmly. With strength born from royal determination, she helped Kim to her feet. Together they stumbled toward the forest as their enemies recovered from the flash grenade. Plasma shots sizzled past them as they reached the tree line. Kim fumbled at her belt and tossed another device behind them. This one exploded with actual force, sending dirt and debris into the air and buying them precious seconds. "Why?" Taya asked as she half-carried the wounded human through the forest. "Why sacrifice yourself for me?" Despite her pain, Lieutenant Kim managed a small smile. "Because that's what humans do for people we care about." Behind them, angry shouts and crashing footsteps announced the pursuit had resumed. Taya adjusted her grip on the injured lieutenant and pressed forward, now determined to save the human who had repeatedly risked everything to protect her. The hunt had been reversed. The princess was now the protector, and she would not fail. Darkness had fallen by the time Princess Taya reached the outskirts of the Coalition outpost. Lieutenant Kim hung limply against her shoulder, barely conscious. The human's blood stained Taya's once elegant royal attire, now torn and dirty from their desperate flight through the forest. "Help!" Taya called as they approached the security perimeter. "I have an injured human officer." Lights immediately swung in their direction. Armed personnel rushed forward, weapons raised until they recognized the Nalarian princess and the wounded Earth soldier. "Lieutenant Kim needs medical attention immediately," Taya commanded, her royal authority returning despite her disheveled appearance. Everything moved quickly after that. Medical staff took Kim away on a hovering stretcher. Security officers escorted Taya into the facility. Questions were asked, reports filed, communications sent to both Earth and Nalarian authorities. The princess refused to leave the medical center. She stood outside the treatment room, her temple markings pulsing with unfamiliar emotions as she watched doctors work on Lieutenant Kim through a transparent panel. "Your Highness?" A human officer approached and saluted. "Commander Junho, ma'am. We've secured the perimeter. You're safe now." "What about the Vordaks and the traitors?" Taya asked, not taking her eyes off the medical team working on Kim. "We've dispatched strike teams based on your information. The shuttle has been located and secured." Commander Junho hesitated. "We've also received word from the Nalarian homeworld. Your father still holds power. The coup attempt appears to have been limited to a small faction." Taya nodded, only partially listening. "Lieutenant Kim's condition?" "Critical but stable. Junho replied. The doctors say she took a direct hit from a Vordax plasma cannon. It's remarkable she survived at all. She is extraordinary, Taya said quietly. Hours passed. The princess refused all suggestions that she rest or attend to her own minor injuries. She maintained her vigil outside the treatment room, royal, posture perfect despite her exhaustion. Eventually, a doctor emerged. She's stabilized, Your Highness. Lieutenant Kim is tough even by human standards. May I see her? Taya asked. The doctor nodded. Briefly, she's conscious but heavily medicated. Inside the room, Lieutenant Kim lay surrounded by medical equipment. Her normally alert eyes were clouded with pain medications, but she recognized the princess immediately. Your Highness, she tried to rise. Stay still, Taya commanded, moving to her bedside. That is a royal order, Lieutenant. A weak smile crossed Kim's face. Yes, ma'am. For a moment, Taya stood in awkward silence. Nilarians did not typically express personal gratitude. Service to the hierarchy was expected, not praised. But this felt different. You saved my life, she said finally. Multiple times. Just doing my job, Kim replied softly. No, it was more than duty. Taya's temple, markings pulsed with emotion. You risked everything for me, why? Lieutenant Kim considered the question carefully despite her medicated state. Because it was right. Because you're not just a diplomatic assignment to me anymore. You're someone I respect. Something strange happened then. Taya felt an unfamiliar sensation, a tightness in her throat, a pressure building behind her eyes. To her shock, moisture gathered and spilled down her blue-tinted cheeks. I'm leaking, she said in confusion, touching the wetness. Kim smiled gently. You're crying. Your Highness, it's a human emotional response. But I'm not human. Nilarians don't cry. Maybe you picked up something from us after all, Kim suggested. Taya wiped away the tears, fascinated by this new experience. It feels strange. Crying can be good, Kim said. It means you care about something deeply. The princess considered this. I care about what happens to you, she admitted. I care about the alliance between our peoples. I care about stopping Minho and his conspirators. Medical staff returned, insisting the lieutenant needed rest. As Taya prepared to leave, Kim caught her hand, a breach of royal protocol that neither mentioned. We did it, Kim said. Together. Taya squeezed the human's hand gently. Yes. Together. 2 weeks passed. Lieutenant Kim recovered with the resilience typical of her species. The princess remained at the coalition outpost, postponing her return to Nalar despite urgent diplomatic communications. She insisted on seeing her protector fully recovered before departing. During this time, events unfolded rapidly across the sector. Advisor Minho and several conspirators were captured. Under questioning, they revealed a complex plot involving isolationist Nilarian factions and Vordax expansionists. The conspiracy extended far beyond what anyone had suspected, reaching high levels in multiple governments. On the day Lieutenant Kim was released from medical care, Princess Taya requested a private meeting with her. They sat in a small garden area within the coalition facility, surrounded by earth plants that Taya had initially found chaotic, but now appreciated for their vibrant diversity. I leave for Nalar tomorrow, the princess said. My father has requested my immediate return. Kim nodded. I understand. The situation there must be complicated. Indeed. The revelation of traitors among our highest ranks has shocked our people. Taya's markings pulsed thoughtfully. But perhaps it was necessary. We had become too certain of our superiority, too closed to outside perspectives. Every civilization faces those challenges, Kim said diplomatically. Taya studied the human carefully. Lieutenant Kim still moved stiffly from her injuries, but her quiet strength remained undiminished. I have submitted my official report on the events of the past weeks, the princess said. but I find myself struggling to properly convey certain aspects of the experience. Which aspects, Your Highness? The personal ones. Taya hesitated, choosing her words with royal precision. Before coming to Earth, I viewed humans as primitive creatures barely worth diplomatic consideration. I saw you as physically weak, technologically backward, culturally chaotic. Kim listened without reaction, allowing the princess to continue. I was wrong, Taya said simply. What humans lack in physical attributes, you compensate for with remarkable adaptability. Your technology follows different paths than ours, but achieves similar results through creative approaches. And your cultural diversity, which I once saw as inefficient, is perhaps your greatest strength. Thank you, Your Highness. That's very insightful. It is merely truth, Taya replied, and there is more. In my culture, individuals serve the hierarchy. Personal sacrifice for another is rare and generally discouraged as inefficient. Yet you repeatedly risked everything to protect me, not just as a diplomatic representative, but as a person you had come to care about. The princess's markings pulsed with emotion. This concept of individual connection overriding systemic calculations, it is something I am still processing. Kim smiled. We call it friendship, Your Highness. Sometimes humanity. Yes. Humanity. Taya nodded slowly. I believe I have finally begun to understand what that word truly means. She reached into a pocket of her newly restored royal garments and withdrew her insignia, the symbol of Nilarian royalty she had removed days ago on Kim's advice. I have a request, she said formally. I wish for you to become the official human liaison to the Nilarian royal court. Lieutenant Kim's eyes widened in surprise. Me? Surely there are diplomats better suited. I do not want a diplomat, Taya interrupted. I want someone who understands both our worlds, someone I trust. She held out the insignia. This has been modified to include Earth's symbol alongside the Nilarian royal crest. A visual representation of our partnership. Kim accepted the token, carefully. I'm honored, Your Highness, but the decision isn't entirely mine. I have responsibilities here, commanding officers, already addressed, Taya said with royal confidence. Your superiors recognize the diplomatic value of this appointment. A week later, Princess Taya stood before the Galactic Coalition Council. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, including her father, Emperor Taiwan of the Nilarian Empire. Lieutenant Kim stood at a respectful distance behind the princess, now dressed in a formal uniform that incorporated elements of both Earth and Nilarian design. The events on Earth have revealed dangerous fractures in our interstellar community, Taya began. Isolationism and supremacy threatened not just the human alliance but galactic stability itself. Her temple markings pulsed with conviction as she continued. I came to Earth believing humans were primitive and unworthy. What I discovered instead was a species with extraordinary qualities we would be wise to emulate. Their physical limitations have fostered innovation. Their brief lifespans have instilled urgency and purpose. Their diversity has created resilience. The princess looked back briefly at Lieutenant Kim before concluding. The Nilarian Empire formally recommends strengthening our alliance with Earth, not merely for strategic advantage, but because humans have something valuable to teach us all. Something I had to experience personally to understand. A council member asked, And what is that, Your Highness? Princess Taya's temple markings pulsed with an emotion no translator could fully capture. That true strength lies not in perfection or uniformity, but in connection, in caring for others, beyond calculation, in something humans simply call humanity. As the council chambers filled with murmurs and discussions, Taya turned to Lieutenant Kim. For the first time since they had met, the princess smiled openly, a gesture she had learned from her human friend. Did I pronounce it correctly? She asked quietly. Humanity? Kim nodded, her own eyes suspiciously moist. Perfectly, Your Highness. Taya, the princess corrected gently. When we are not in formal settings, I would like you to call me Taya. Only if you'll call me Hana. The princess considered this breach of protocol, then nodded. Agreed. Hana. And so began a new chapter in galactic diplomacy, founded not on strategic necessity alone, but on understanding and friendship between two very different worlds.